At some point, you decided people were too much, too complicated, too exhausting, too risky. So you pulled back, maybe gradually, maybe all at once. And for a while, it felt like relief. This video is about what happens after the relief fades. Because something does happen, and most people don't see it coming until it's already well underway. Before we get into it, if this channel gives you psychology that actually reflects your real experience, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. It takes 5 seconds, and it means you won't miss a video like this one. Now let's go. Here is what most people distancing themselves from others don't know. Humans are not designed for solitude, not as a default state, not as a long-term operating mode. You are a social species, not in a motivational poster sense, but in a hard biological sense. Your nervous system was literally built to regulate itself through contact with other nervous systems. Researchers call this co-regulation. Your heart rate, your cortisol levels, your immune response. All of these are partially calibrated by physical proximity to other safe humans. When you remove that proximity consistently, your biology begins to read the absence as danger, not loneliness in the emotional sense. Threat. Your brain sounds an alarm and does not turn it off. So what does that alarm actually do to you? First, your threat detection system becomes hypersensitive. The amygdala, already running hotter without social regulation, starts reading neutral situations as hostile. A text not replied to becomes rejection. A quiet room becomes suffocating. A mild misunderstanding becomes evidence that people cannot be trusted. Second, your self-perception begins to distort. Without the corrective mirror of other people's responses to you,
when you remove that
your
proximity
internal narrative
consistently,
about who you
your
are
biology
starts
begins
to
to read the
drift.
absence as
Research
danger.
shows that isolated individuals consistently overestimate how negatively others perceive them. You become the harshest judge of yourself because there is no one else to offer a different verdict. Third, your cognitive function declines. Social interaction is not small talk. It is a cognitively demanding activity that exercises working memory, perspective taking, and emotional processing. Remove it, and those capacities quietly atrophy. And here is where it becomes a trap, because the symptoms of distancing make reconnection harder. Your threat detection is now hypersensitive. So social situations that were once easy now feel genuinely threatening. You avoid them. Avoidance reduces your exposure to the social cues that would recalibrate your threat system. Your system stays calibrated for danger. You avoid more. John Cacioppo, the psychologist who spent decades studying loneliness, found that chronic loneliness creates a self-protective hypervigilance that makes lonely people more likely to expect rejection, more likely to interpret ambiguous social signals negatively, and therefore less likely to take the social risks that would end their loneliness. The trap closes like this. The lonelier you get, the harder it becomes to stop being lonely. Distance does not make reconnection easier. It makes reconnection feel impossible. The research on this is unambiguous and worth hearing directly. Chronic social isolation is associated with a 26% increased risk of early death, comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It raises cortisol chronically, suppresses immune function, and increases inflammatory markers associated with cardiovascular disease and cognitive decline. Cacioppo's research found that lonely people's brains show measurably different activity in threat response regions, even when viewing neutral images. And a landmark Harvard study that followed participants for over 80 years found one variable more predictive of long-term health, happiness, and cognitive function than income, status, diet, or exercise: the quality of their relationships. Not the number, the quality. So what does psychology say to do? Especially if the withdrawal was intentional, if people genuinely hurt you, or if reconnection genuinely feels threatening. First, you do not need to reconnect with the people who caused the distancing. Social recovery does not require forgiving specific individuals or returning to specific relationships. It requires contact with safe people, and safe people do not have to be old ones. Second, start smaller than feels necessary. Research on social reintegration consistently shows that micro-interactions, brief, low-stakes contact with strangers or acquaintances, meaningfully reduce threat response hypervigilance before deeper connection is attempted. A conversation with a barista, a nod to a neighbor, small inputs that tell your nervous system the world is not entirely hostile. Third, the goal is not to feel ready to reconnect. The goal is to reconnect before you feel ready, because readiness in a hypervigilant system may never arrive on its own. The action precedes the feeling, always. If you pulled away from people because they hurt you, that makes complete sense. If you pulled away because you needed space, that makes complete sense too. This video is not a judgment. It is information. The biology does not care about your reasons. It responds to the input, and the input it needs is connection. Imperfect, small, gradual, real connection. You are not broken for pulling back. You are human, and humans were built to find their way back.